Welcome back. I'm Marky Billson. Really, just to complete those thoughts about the regular season, just meaning nothing anymore. I mean, look at last two World Series. And played in November. The world, it's like, shall I watch the election returns or should I watch the World Series? We're almost to that point. And we probably will be. I guess there'll be an election sooner or later. There'll be on November 2nd or so. So, But the last 2 years, the Braves won it all in 2021, and they were the final seed in the playoffs. The Phillies were the final, the fifth seed in the National League last year. They went to the World Series. Why do we have the regular season? I mean, it's become absolutely meaningless. We are catering more towards who will finish fifth than who will finish first. We are making our sports mediocre. We are championing mediocrity. We are having in spring football 4 and 6 teams play for championships. It's gotten to the point where I'm wondering, why don't we just have one big, huge tournament? Invite all the teams in there. It'll be kind of interesting. We had a 7-game season this year, and we lost in the first round, and we actually were 0-4 this baseball season. We hope to do better next year. Probably wouldn't be quite that, but you'd have to figure out some other manner in doing it. But I mean, it's gotten to that point where the regular season means nothing. And I don't know any. I do think, there's a lot of money in the postseason. Okay. But could we possibly realize that maybe the NFL, and yes, even they've expanded their playoff system where they've got 14 teams in instead of the previous 12. But at least we kind of feel like the Chiefs and the Eagles were the best two teams last year, and they put on an entertaining Super Bowl and such. At least there, you have a feeling of more, the Kansas City Chiefs do what they've played, AFC title game last 5 years. So this has a feeling of being an elite team, that sort of thing. I mean, and they've done well in the regular season. There just seems to be more of a value there. And frankly, I'm not sure. I mean, it's fun to watch if you're one of the fans of those teams, don't get me wrong, but if you're 9-8 and trying to, it is fun to see the last weekend play out if you're one of those teams. But are you really at 9-8 worthy of a championship? Even with Tom Brady last year, when you had an 8-9 Tampa Bay Buccaneers team making the playoffs and then getting blown up by the Dallas Cowboys and Tom Brady. I mean, what more of a feather in his cap would it have been for him to have left his career undefeated against the Dallas Cowboys? That would have been, he loses last game. All right. Now it's time to move on. Had that great comeback against the Saints last year. We'll give you that, but great way. But that would have been enough for him to go out on, wouldn't it have? Why do you have to Dan Marino him? I'm sorry, I love Dan Marino, but yeah, his last playoff game didn't work out well. Why are we doing this to Tom Brady? Because we have to have an 8-9 team in the playoffs. We have to water it down to that. Did anybody really think, even with Tom Brady, an 8-9 team was worthy of playing for a title? There are too many teams that play for championships and postseason. The worst offender, though, and I'm going to give you this story and move on to the world of college basketball, which can't just be satisfied with having 68 out of 353 teams play for some sort of championship. We have to have an NIT putting, I don't know, is it 32? Is it 40 now? Who knows? Who cares? Nobody watches the NIT unless your team is in it and then you have only a passing interest. Come on, we see these. If you ever watch an NIT game, there's 3,000 people in the stands. I mean, it's, this sort of thing. But I mentioned that, and don't get me started about the CBI or something like that, the Vegas 16, which becomes the Vegas 8. I mention all of this because, of course, Bob Huggins resigned really at a horrific offseason. Just was arrested for drunk driving recently. This came after he used some slurs on a radio talk show about a month before. So West Virginia, basically, he resigned. If I may borrow a line from an old Pittsburgh sports writer named Roy McHugh, he resigned in the sense that Socrates committed suicide when he drank the hemlock. Okay, so that was the case there. So Bob Huggins, a few days ago, resigns as West Virginia's basketball coach after a somewhat successful and lengthy tenure there, in which I know he took the Mountaineers once to the Final Four and is among the all-time leaders in college basketball coaching victories, etc., etc. It is now being rumored that Andy Kennedy is going to be the next coach at West Virginia, which I was a little surprised upon. I thought maybe they would just go with an assistant to lead them and then go for a big search. But evidently the West Virginia job, hey, even in the Big 12, Huggins has made the program into something that a coach would leave his program, even at this time of year, to go take over. And that coach appears to be Andy Kennedy, late of West Virginia. Interestingly enough, he took over for Bob Huggins, I think, once before over at Cincinnati. That's how his coaching career started about 20 years ago, at least head coaching career, I should point that out. Andy Kennedy, late of UAB, he's enjoyed 320 victory seasons at Alabama, Birmingham. Interesting thing about Kennedy in his coaching career, which has seen him win 334 games and lose less than 200. He's made the NCAAs at Cincinnati, Ole Miss, and UAB 3 times. Okay. He's made the NIT 8 times. Not important tournament, that sort of thing. But Andy Kennedy also has a propensity for winning 20 games. He's won 20 or more games in 13 of the seasons that he has coached, and that's not easy to do at a place like Ole Miss, which is where the majority of his coaching career has been. Again, he's had a lot of success there at UAB, so it appears that Andy Kennedy is going to leave UAB and join West Virginia. When you're at UAB, and that's Conference USA, going on the American and all this, then yeah, it looks good to the Big 12, even in isolated Morgantown, West Virginia, starts looking good to you. So now the question is, UAB, which is a respectable program, who's going to be their coach? Now, I have no tie on this, but I'm going to throw out a name here, and it's Bucky McMillan, who's coaching across the street at Samford. Now, I was against the hire of Bucky McMillan at Samford. Nobody cares about Samford basketball. Samford's in the Southern Conference. They used to draw less than 1,000 fans a game. They're now drawing, and just absolutely amazed, they can draw more than 2,000 fans a game now. But last 2 years, they've been fairly competitive in the Southern Conference, which is a nice mid-major basketball league, albeit a one-bid league. We're talking East Tennessee State. Furman won a game in the NCAA tournament this past year. Furman won it this past year. So, it's a legitimate conference and has been ranked usually a little bit down this past year, but a lot of times in sort of the rankings of conferences, and you've got 31 of them, they can be in the upper half of that, usually more times than not, the Southern. So he's at Samford, which is a real tough place to win. But McMillan had a lot of success as a high school coach. And UAB to Samford, UAB, admittedly, there you're going to be in the shadow of the SEC, Alabama, Auburn, even during basketball season. But I wonder if they would make the overture across the street, and it would be a tremendous step up for Bucky McMillan. Now, like I said, I don't like it when a guy goes straight from high school to college as a head coach. I have no problem if you start off as an assistant and then work your way up to become a college head coach. This sort of thing. That's what Bobby Knight did, for crying out loud. And many coaches have done that. But advancing that way, that's very Jerry Faust. That's very Bob Wade. That's I think, equating college with high school a little too much. And I mean, Penny Hardaway did it at Memphis. Of course, he had the NBA experience and all that. But even then, it's Memphis. Uh, they haven't exactly been to the Final Four since that time. It's sort of, we expect a little more. I mean, Penny Hardaway, that's sort of, and it hasn't happened. At Samford, now again, I think this last year they won in a down Southern Conference, and they lost the 7th seed in the in the Southern Conference tournament there at Samford. But that he has improved that program to the point, I think, back-to-back 20 victory seasons. So that might be somebody I think that UAB could look at. And why would he want that? Well, I don't know his contract situation, McMillan's right off the bat. But I could tell you that he'd get a lot more exposure at UAB. It's a story. When I was a sports talk show, Tri-Cities, Tennessee, Samford and East Tennessee State were both in the Southern Conference. And ETSU was our home team. And, I got my show on. ETSU is going to play in Samford and whatever sport. Duck Hodges, by the way, if you're a Steelers fan, if you remember him, 2009 quarterback, or 2019 quarterback, excuse me, he went to Samford and all that. Bobby Bowden's career began at Samford. Chan Gailey, okay, we're end of Samford Bulldogs football history. I called up Samford because I'm looking online for information and stories about Samford, and really can only get the website of the university telling me what's been going on. And I can get great statistical analysis from there, but I can't really get the nitty gritty and all that. You want a writer to tell you what's really going on. Who's got that? He'll give you an opinion, all this sort of stuff. And I just can't find any stories on what's AL.com. That's what the Birmingham, print media outlet basically is. I can't find anything on Samford. Well, I call up SID and I say, sports talk shows, can you recommend any writers covering your program? It got to be somebody. I mean, I probably can't find them and all this. And the SID comes back and he says, well, we don't have any. About 2 years ago, we had somebody from AL.com cover one of our games, but yeah, we don't get much newspaper coverage here. It's Birmingham, Alabama, for crying out loud. You can't, send out a stringer or something for a game story or whatever. I mean, but that's how far down Samford is in Birmingham in the sports scene. Meanwhile, UAB, that's not the way. They just built a new football stadium. They're going to the American Athletic Conference. They're a program, an athletic program, and a brand on the rise. Now, will they ever beat out Alabama and Auburn? No. But could they make their own little niche? Yeah. Could you go to the NCAA tournament, possibly as an at-large team, out of the American? Well, a lot easier than the Southern. So, you're looking at who could be at UAB if and when Andy Kennedy leaves for West Virginia. Bucky McMillan. And then Samford can fall into the doldrums again, and I don't know, they can find some other high school coach to get. I don't know, maybe Murray Bartow will go back to UAB. He's available, right? See that, play the zone defense all the time and all that. Okay, Hockey Hall of Fame. I know that, you can tell me that hockey is sort of a cult sport, but I do want to mention this because I think these guys deserve it, and because I like hockey. Hockey Hall of Fame, they announced their class. Also, if you've never been to Toronto, I love going to the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. It is both in a bank and a shopping mall. You go to the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto, and yes, you enter in through a shopping mall. Okay, like you were going to a department store. It's an amazing thing. You go out there and you go to a vault, and that's where they keep the old rings from the Stanley Cup up. It's quite something to see. Along with hockey jerseys of it's Hockey Hall of Fame, so it's international. They've got Lennon's picture, I know, on one hockey jersey. No, not John Lennon. I mean Vladimir Lenin. Yes, Lenin's tomb, the first, Not a czar. No, he did away with those things. The first leader of the Soviet Union. Yes, that guy. He just have his, obviously what would now be a Russian hockey team. Now, I don't know if they have Putin's picture on a jersey out there. I just kind of hope not, but I'm sure somewhere there's a team. I don't, but no, I mean, if you can recall, I mean, certainly, I mean, how big it was in 1980 when the Americans beat the USSR in the gold medal game. And, you can see it's the Hockey Hall of Fame. Come on. I love it very much. Okay. So here's who's going to be joining the Hockey Hall of Fame. You got Henrik Lundqvist, who may never have won a Stanley Cup with the New York Rangers, but is sixth all-time on the victories list. Tom Barrasso, a favorite of mine, won 2 Stanley Cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Vezina Trophy winner his rookie year. Came in with the Buffalo Sabres. Just was, Mike Verner won a couple of cups, one in Calgary, the other in Detroit. He's going to be making it. He's a famous goalie. Pierre Turgeon. 19 seasons, averaged more than a point a game, finished a career with more than 1,200 games with more than 1,300 points. Certainly longevity, scoring, he's there. Here's one. Caroline Ouellette, great Canadian women's player. Allowing women's hockey players in. Okay, yeah, let's see that side of the sport. Sure. You've got female basketball players in Springfield. Yes, certainly. Ken Hitchcock. Remember he was coach of the Stars back in '99 when they won the Cup, beat the Sabres, aforementioned. Had that neutral zone trap going around and all that. 4th all-time in victories, Ken Hitchcock. That's a coach that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. All these are quality selections. And then Pierre Lacroix, who was the general manager of the Quebec Nordiques, who became, well, I told you what I thought of as franchise relocation a little bit earlier. He became the general manager of the Colorado Avalanche when they moved and won the Stanley Cup twice in Denver, once in the 90s, 96, and once in 2001. All that. So he'll be elected posthumously, which is he died 3 years ago, did Lacroix. But these are all worthy selections. Anyway, where I'm getting to with this is Tom Barrasso, who I said was a favorite of mine. One of the reasons why he was the first professional athlete I ever interviewed in a locker room after a game for a college radio station on a carrier current station, asking really stupid questions and being very scared in my first, visit to a locker. It was Tom Barrasso. Barrasso developed a reputation in Pittsburgh later on of being not easy to work with in the media or being something of a prima donna. And I want to hold that right here and close out this segment talking about that. But Tom Barrasso, like I said, to me, when I was that 19-year-old kid, just how did it feel to win the game today, Tom Barrasso? He was very professional and nice to me and all this. I remember he had a tattoo where you wouldn't necessarily see it of a devil's head with 2 hockey sticks behind it and all that. And I was enamored with that. But no, this is a guy, like I said, he was in many ways the final piece of the Stanley Cup teams that Mario Lemieux took to Stanley Cup championships. But he did develop later on a reputation as being something of a complainer, or difficult in the media to work with. There's a famous story of a writer who himself has a reputation of being quite bombastic and swinging a stick at this writer. I'm not saying that, nobody deserves to have a stick swung at them, let's face it. But, 2 personalities, oil and water, things like that happen. Question, though, is how important is that? And we can get to that here in our next segment. But how important is it for you that your sports heroes be an okay guy? Because it got to be with Tom Barrasso as time went on that it didn't mean that much that in 1992 in the Stanley Cup Finals, he had 49 saves in Game 3 to win 1-0, and helped lead the Penguins to the Cup, it became that the media didn't like him. And the fans picked up on that, and I can't figure out why. I'm Marky Billson.